Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Senate Bill number 108 would authorize counties to impose an earnings tax upon individuals employed or working in such county and resident individuals of such county upon submitting a proposition to levy an earnings tax at an election and receiving the approval of a majority of the electors of the county voting on the question. The earnings tax is defined in the bill as a tax on the salaries, wages, commissions, and other compensation earned by non-residents of the county for work done or services performed or rendered in the county, and by residents of the county. The term salaries, wages, commissions, and other compensation does not include contributions to deferred compensation plans if such contributions are not subject to Kansas state income tax. If a majority of the electors voting thereon do approve the levying of such tax, the governing body of the county would provide for the tax by resolution. Any earnings tax shall not exceed 1% per year. The revenue shall be pledged for general county purposes, and all of the revenue derived from the earnings tax shall be credited in the budget of the county to reduce the amount of revenue otherwise necessary to be raised from the ad valorem property tax. Once every 5 years after the initial levy, the question whether to continue the tax would need to be submitted to the electors. Any person exempt from payment of state income tax pursuant to KSA 7932-113 would also be exempt from the earnings tax. The county would also be able to provide for deductions and exemptions from salaries, wages, and commissions, and exemptions on account of spouses or dependents. The state of Kansas and its political subdivisions would be required to deduct the tax from earnings of their employees who are subject to the tax and remit the same to the county. The state and its political subdivisions would be allowed to retain a percentage of the amount collected to compensate the employer for collection. A county levying such tax would also be authorized to require employers within the county to collect and remit the tax that may be levied upon their employees. Such employers would also be entitled to retain a percentage of the amount collected to compensate the employer for collecting the tax unless the county, by resolution, reduces or eliminates the fee. In accordance with specific provisions in the bill, the county would be able to request of all employers within the state listings of employees who reside in the county and their address. Such lists shall only be used for purposes of the collection of the earnings tax and shall be treated as confidential as provided in the bill. And the bill would take effect from and after publication in the statute book, and I would be happy to stand for questions.
Thank you, Amelia. Senator Schallenberger.
Thank you. Thank you, and I think I heard you say a couple of things. One of them was if you pay a property tax, you're exempted from this. Did I hear that? What did I?
No, that's no. A person who is exempt from state income tax, if there would be, I don't know if we have. I would have to go look at the statute to see if there's an exemption for state income tax for any individual. But if a person is exempt from state income tax, then they would be exempt from the earnings tax, not property tax,
Right.
not
So
related to
you're not
property
a
tax.
taxpayer,
No.
you're not going to have to pay this. The second thing is, so there's a mechanism in this that says all the money that we collect from an earnings tax has to reduce property taxes. I'm assuming there's a formula here.
Madam Chair, the bill itself does not provide a formula per se, but it does provide that the revenue from the earnings tax, when the county puts their budget together, that they have to credit those earnings in their budget to reduce the amount of property tax revenue that needs to be generated. So when they do their budget, they would credit it to the accounts that are otherwise funded by property tax.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam.
Senator Peterson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Amelia, if someone lives in a border town, and like they say, an electrician lived in Kansas City, Missouri, and he worked in Kansas City, Kansas, would he pay the earnings tax on the earnings that he earned in Kansas City, Kansas?
Okay, could you repeat the question?
There was an electrician that lived in Kansas City, Missouri, and he worked across the border in Kansas City, Kansas. His company was in Missouri, but he was doing work in Kansas City, Kansas. Would he pay the earnings tax in Kansas City, Kansas?
If Kansas City, Kansas, if the bill passed and if the Kansas City, Kansas, if the unified government, if the county instituted an earnings tax, there would be an earnings tax owed on the amounts from services and work performed in the Kansas county that imposes the earnings tax.
Thank you.
And that would be much like it is today with state income tax. Yeah. Yeah, good question, though. Any other questions? Thank you, Amelia. Our first conferee is Senator David Haley. Welcome to the committee.
Chair Tyson, members of the committee, thank you and good morning. And thank Ms. Donahue for clearly outlining what Senate Bill 108 does. And let me take a quick second of personal privilege to thank Mr. Gaunt and others that helped bring this into being today. I'm excited about this bill, Senate Bill 108, and actually flattered and honored that we have some of the conferees that we have who will speak to it far more clearly than I. You have my written testimony, Madam Chair and members, and I want to divert a little bit from it to take just a few quick moments to share how crucial an earnings tax can be for several counties should they enact them, primarily mine. As the committee has heard, the application of all revenues that would be derived are to be applied in total. I don't know the mechanics exactly, but in total toward the reduction of real property taxes. I don't need to share with anyone here how crucial that is for many counties. Certainly in Wyandotte County, it's paramount. I'm excited about this because there's a revenue that would be derived, much of which is already earned there, wherever it might be or wherever the resident might be, that would then be applied to the reduction of spiraling real property taxes. I worked for many years, Madam Chair, in Kansas City, Missouri, Wyandotte County, and worked in KCK, paid the 1% of the earnings tax that they have. Every 5 years, the citizens of Jackson County, Missouri, where Kansas City, Missouri is located, and St. Louis, I don't know their county, but also have had the earnings tax similar to this. Don't know where they apply their 1%, but that revenue has gone consistently back into the county coffers from that 1% earnings tax derived, no matter where. I, a Kansas resident, paid into Missouri that 1% in Kansas City, Missouri. And the citizens of those counties that have had the earnings tax in Missouri, when this is put before the voters every 5 years and renewal, have had close to an 80%, 75 to 80% affirmative. In short, you'll hear perhaps from the proponents or the opponents that this is something that's a detriment to growth or economic growth, or it stifles growth. Such has not been the case. It has not played out anyway in Missouri, and indeed, I believe it would be an acceptable, in fact, favorable, if allowed to be implemented opportunity. This is really a local issue, local control. I remember my time on this committee, and I know that often we're involved in matters, but I hope that we'll get an opportunity. I plead with you, Madam Chair, that we'll hear the bill out and we'll at least be able to put it through a vote and work it at some appropriate time. I am genuinely grateful for this opportunity. You know that, Madam Chair, and I'll be happy at the appropriate time to stand for any questions.
Thank you, Senator. Committee, any questions? Senator Clemp.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Senator Haley. Do you, and maybe another conferee might be able to answer this, but do you know what percent of Wyandotte County, folks that work in Wyandotte County, travel across the state line and live across the state line or outside of the Wyandotte County, the Wyandotte County in general? Do you have, go ahead, sir.
Madam Chair, Senator Clem, I don't know exactly how many live over the state line. It has been estimated that as much as 70% of income that's earned in Wyandotte County is earned by those who live outside of Wyandotte County.
That's my understanding. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. 70%.
Any other questions? Senator Pett.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Senator, this is an interesting concept, and I like the idea that it mentions that the money derived from such an earning tax would be used to, as I read it, reduce the property tax ad valorem tax. How would the taxing entities be held accountable to where they're not just saying, well, we're going to increase spending somewhat and just minimally offset property taxes? That's not a very good question. I didn't word it very good, but if you sort of follow what I'm saying.
Well, Madam Chair, Senator Peck, I understand exactly what you're saying, and I am concerned about that matrix as well. As you know, sir, we had a similar discussion when we were looking at the proposed constitutional amendment. It's 3% for appraisal, that would they not, if that were implemented, and I was proud to support that, by the way. I did support that which is still before our legislature. Again, desperate to see us hold the line on escalating real property taxes and the ripple effect being those appraisals. But the argument was the mill levy, for example, could be raised elsewhere. We may thwart the purpose, or there may be those who will thwart the purpose or the intent in some other means. So I understand your question, and I know that there are minds at work to still find a way, should this revenue be applied 100% from the earnings tax. There are those who will look to find a way and may be successful to still increase it somewhere else.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you again, Madam Chair and members.
Next up is Representative Page. Welcome to the Tax Committee. And I apologize, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator Tyson. Thank you, committee, for this opportunity to come and share. I'm a lifelong resident of Wyandotte County. The only time I wasn't there is when I was in college for 6 years. And when I came back with the commitment because I wanted to help the people in my county, my city, and that's important to me. That's something I learned from my parents, that it wasn't enough for me to succeed, but you have to reach out and help people. And I tried on the other side with Senator Petty to try to get a bill introduced, somewhat the same thing as Senator Haley. And I was told through the Taxation Committee that maybe next year. They didn't see an entrance in it. But if you live in Wyandotte County, we're paying some of the highest taxes in the state. So we're desperately trying to find ways in which to help our county support itself, take care of itself. And that's important because we want our county to succeed, be successful. We have good leadership, our mayor and others who are here today. And the main thing I heard on every door that I knocked on when I was running for office, this is my first time, and all I heard before I could even open the door, what are you going to do about the taxes? We can't keep doing this. And our young people are leaving. I have several nieces and nephews, went to college. They never came back here. Part of the reason was the economy and what they had to pay. They did better in other places. So we desperately need this. It would help businesses, it would help taxes, the taxpayers, and just the workers in general. So when I heard this was coming here today, and I don't have a written text for you, but I will get that together, I wanted to say something and let our mayor and others know, as well as Senator Haley, that we support him, the county supports you, and we need this desperately. You know, I'm crazy enough to say that maybe we need to pass a marijuana law. We're trying to figure out how do we do this. And some people, no, I get that. but we gotta have a way to support ourselves. And this would allow us to do that. Too much money is driving out of our county. And I too, like Senator Haley, I worked in Kansas City, Missouri for the Kansas City, Missouri school system, and I had to pay that as well. And I didn't think it was that bad, 2%. I'm still getting paid. I can help somebody else as well as try to, and we need this because, like I said, I taught for 30 years, and most of our teachers don't live in our district. It's not mandatory that they live there, but we have a lot of money driving out of the county that could go back in and help reduce our taxes and allow us to do other things. So I just asked you would have mercy and at least allow it to come on the floor and be voted on so that we're trying to sustain ourselves and we need some help. So I just ask that if you would.
Thank you, Representative. Any questions? Thank you for your testimony, and we look forward to receiving your written testimony. Appreciate it. Thank
And I
you.
look forward from hearing that yes vote from you. So we all have something to look forward to. Thank you so much.
Mayor Garner, welcome to the Kansas Tax Committee. It's nice to see you again.
Yes, greetings, Madam Chair, and greetings to committee members. Great to see everybody. I'm Kansas City, Kansas Mayor Tyrone Garner of the Unified Government of Wyandotte County, and I send you greetings from Wyandotte County. The great folks in Kansas City, Kansas, Bonner Springs, Edwardsville, and Lake Quivira share their support for this legislation. I'd like to say that Wyandotte County is the gateway to the great state of Kansas coming off the Lewis and Clark Viaduct on I-70. And so this bill is of great significance and importance to us. I know that I've given you all written testimony, but for the record, I will read it. And thank you again for allowing me this opportunity to speak.
Mr. Mayor, if you would not read your testimony, we like people to speak from the heart. And,
Okay.
because we can read it. So
Okay,
if you could make
awesome.
your
Well,
points, that'd be great.
Speaking from my heart, Madam Chair, Senate Bill 108, it really gives an opportunity for us to build upon what we all want, and that is a reduction in property taxes, not just for Wyandotte County and Kansas City, Kansas, Lake Quivira, Bonner Springs, and Edwardsville, but for anybody that loves and calls Kansas home. This is a unique opportunity when we're searching, I know here at the state level and at the local levels, how do we reduce the tax burden on our residents? I think this is a great opportunity for a bipartisan support to find a way to do just that with this legislation. When you talk about an earnings tax and what that means, I know the legislation is written to where the voters would have to approve, but I would also like you consider allowing local governments to be able to approve the legislation as well. When you talk about Wyandotte County having some of the highest paid wages in the great state of Kansas, but 70% of those wage earners, as we know, do not live in Wyandotte County and Kansas City, Kansas, which leaves Wyandotte County, and I'm just going to talk about my town in particularly in Kansas City, Kansas, to carry the burden of police, fire, infrastructure, administrative services, and other things that most municipalities need to function and run a government. When you have 70% of those wages leaving our community, it creates a higher tax burden on those individuals that still live in Wyandotte County. And so this legislation would be of great value to the awesome people that love and call Wyandotte County home. And I also believe it'd be great value to any community throughout the great state of Kansas that would choose to enact this legislation. Wyandotte County took the unified government took the initial step to go revenue neutral because we do take seriously the narrative that our residents not only deserve, but they have demanded property tax relief. And we believe that coupling this type of legislation with that option of revenue neutral will further that narrative. And Madam Chair, we thank you for coming and really educating our community on the value of revenue neutral. Your testimony alone really moved the needle for our elected body to go revenue neutral. And I believe we're one of the largest municipalities in the great state of Kansas to go revenue neutral and use that legislation. So the legislation brings a lot of value to Wyandotte County. We know it's worked in other communities across the water in the great state of Missouri, and we believe that it'll just have just as much impact and value when you talk about property tax reduction. Things that you can consider are seniors on fixed incomes, our low-income residents, where property taxes are really having a detrimental burden on them. Testimony has come before the unified government where individuals have talked about being taxed out of their homes because of property taxes and the increase in valuations. And so this legislation would at least put a pressure point on that and allow for substantial property tax relief. I propose that we stick to the legislation as it's written to make sure, because I know there was a question from Senator Peck that talked about municipalities that may want to stray and use this funding for something other than property tax relief. I propose and ask that we stick to making sure that this legislation, if it's allowed to move forward, and I hope that it does, is strictly used for property tax relief, giving municipalities across the great state of Kansas another tool to bring the relief that so many of our residents have asked for. And I know that there's been a lot of debate here at the Capitol and the State House on what that could look like. I believe that this is another opportunity to bring this message and this narrative and this type of proposal forward to the great state of Kansas, showing that we are committed, both locally and here at the state, to bringing some type of property tax legislation forward that can bring real relief to all those that love and call the great state of Kansas home. And so I'm confident that if used appropriately, this legislation, that it could be impactful, and it could grow business. It could anchor residents in not just Wyandotte County, but in the great state of Kansas, bringing more people to our state and to our communities locally because of not having property taxes. I know other states across the nation are looking at zero property taxes as well. My mother lives in Alabama, and I know she's a senior. She's 71. And over 65 residents pay zero property taxes on their residentials. And that's a great value to her, being on Social Security, on a fixed income. If she didn't have that there for her, she wouldn't be able to stay in her home. And so even thinking outside the box on how we can help our veterans and our seniors and our lower income folks in Kansas and really applying this influx of revenues and property tax savings to those most in need would be of great value. And it would free up dollars for local municipalities to use those for police, fire, infrastructure, and being able to at least service our residents in a way to ensure the essential functions of government are carried out without the added burden of wondering or maybe losing residents because of the ever-growing property taxes that seem to be a reoccurring narrative, at least in Wyandotte County. And I believe that our residents have called for it, they demand it, and they deserve property tax relief. And I believe that this isn't a Democrat or Republican or independent issue. This is a Kansas issue. This is an everyday folks issue. People, no matter what their party line, have asked for it. I say this is an opportunity as for it to give them and bring them the property tax relief opportunity that they both demand and deserve. So thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, committee members, for your time, and I'm open for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When you brought up Alabama, I study quite a few states, and I've looked at it. They are considerably lower for all residents than Kansas on their property taxes. I actually used to live there, so I own property down there. Senator Owens.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for being here, Mayor. I just want to understand this. Based on your tax analysis, are you proposing that if this were to pass and be fully implemented, you would eliminate property taxes completely in your jurisdiction?
I think there's an opportunity, if this is done right, that there could be a potential for us to reduce, if it's applied to property taxes and the amount of money that we bring in, we could potentially reduce property taxes in Wyandotte County. and move away from property taxes in general, just through this legislation alone. When you look at the actual numbers of the people that work and the revenues that we bring in and what we do collect from property taxes, this shared dynamic of spreading that burden with others that don't live in our community. A lot of folks do live in the great state of Missouri. They come to Kansas to work. We believe that there's an opportunity for that to occur, not just in Wyandotte County, but we think there's an opportunity for that to occur in other municipalities throughout the great state of Kansas.
Okay, if I may, Madam Chair, and I apologize for that. I don't know why my phone just decided to start talking. So you're not concerned that this will inhibit economic development? I mean, honestly, because I'm thinking of this from my perspective, from a business owner, my desire to locate in a community that has a wage tax, even if I have a decrease in property tax, and then my ability to recruit workers that would then be taxed higher in your jurisdiction than they would be another. So, yeah.
I think what we've seen occur in Kansas City, Missouri, that hasn't been the case. If you look at the development and the growth in Kansas City, Missouri, it's just the opposite. There's extreme exponential growth and development that's occurring in the great state of Missouri, and they do have an earnings tax. And so I don't foresee that happening. You can't, predict for every scenario, but if you look at what has already occurred, you look at the best practice of how they've implemented it, I just don't see that happening, especially when you talk about most folks are going to go to where the jobs are at. And again, Wyandotte County has some of the highest paying jobs and wages anywhere you find in the great state of Kansas, and I don't see that changing.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Schallenberger.
Thank you. Just kind of following up on that, because on this sheet, I just want to make sure I understand the numbers. By the way, thank you for coming, and I think the citizens of Kansas City should be happy that you're their mayor. So you seem to care, at least in the brief period of time that we've heard from you. Kansas City, Kansas, real property tax collected 35 million. Is that what that is? 149?
Yes, sir.
And a half a cent or a half a percent earnings tax is 27,300,000. So are you saying with a 0.5% earnings tax, you could take your property tax from 35 million to 7 million?
That's our initial estimates, yes, sir. And that would be huge for our community. When you talk about Wyandotte County being still, even with some of the highest wage earners, but you got to remember, most of those high wage earners don't live in Wyandotte County. What's left is some of the poorest distressed zip codes anywhere you find in the great state of Kansas.
Thank you. Thank you.
If I could close, Madam Chair, real quick. I would like to note for the record that any proposal that may move forward, I would ask that we exempt any potential of future growth or expansions of sports teams that may occur in Wyandotte County. We would like to add that, and I would like that for the record, that we would like the expansion of any potential for future sports teams in Wyandotte County to be exempt from the legislation.
So they would not pay the income tax?
Yes, ma'am.
So that's interesting you brought that up, because I'm sure you've heard the rumors. I got a phone call this morning, and they were calling this, they referred to a sports program that we were trying to capture, that this bill resulted as the conversations about sports teams. They said nothing to do that. I can attest to Senator Haley has introduced this bill way before. It's probably the third time I think he's introduced it. So it has nothing to do. It's just a coincidence.
Thank you, ma'am.
So thank you. Committee, any other questions? Seeing none. Thank you very much for your testimony. I'm going to have to digest the data. I've actually asked for those numbers. I don't want to panic the committee, but what it would look like if we did a state income tax and sales tax versus property tax. I don't want to scare you guys, but I do look at those numbers. So committee, our next conferee is Jeff Culbertson. Welcome to the Tax Committee again. Nice to see you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for hearing me this morning. I'm going to try to stick to my narrative here because I've got a lot of information, and to get it all in there without straying, I've got it down to about 3 minutes. So the state of Kansas has mandated all 105 counties only use one source of income to fund their county budgets, and that is property tax. Sometimes state legislation is passed statewide, but does not work well for every county. This system of funding does not work for Leavenworth County because we are 50% property tax exempt. Forcing us to only use property taxes in our county puts an unfair burden on our residents because of Fort Leavenworth, the prisons, state property, schools, and churches in our county. We have more prisons and Catholic Archdiocese property than any other county. Fort Leavenworth by itself would be contributing over $30 million a year toward the county services and assets. But the state says they don't have to pay for the county assets and services that they use. Over 100,000 non-residents work in Leavenworth County. They have to use our roads and bridges to get to work, but they pay nothing to sustain them. The fort uses the county ambulance service, for example, but pays nothing toward the $2 million it costs the county taxpayers to maintain this EMS service every year. Only 33,000 residents are paying property taxes in Leavenworth County, so a few people are paying a lot. Even though the fort pays over $500 million in salaries each year and makes over a $2 billion economic impact on our community, the county gets none of that. So the fort actually causes an economic obsolescence to the county budget. If you go to an income tax system, you get way more people paying a little. Moreover, the people making more money can afford to pay more taxes. People making less money pay less taxes. A property tax system doesn't care how much money you make. Income tax is a way to charge taxes more fairly. This property tax system is literally taxing people out of their homes in Leavenworth County. A 1% increase in income tax could eliminate Leavenworth County property taxes. We are the third highest income tax earner in the state. I haven't talked to one taxpayer in our county that would not trade a 1% more income tax to replace what they're paying in property tax. We don't qualify for pilot checks from the federal government because we have a DOD facility, not a Department of Interior facility. The idea of not paying for DODs is because they provide jobs for our community. We are very appreciative of this fact. We completely realize Leavenworth County would be nothing without the fort. We understand the economic multiplier and the fact that a dollar spent changes hands 8 times within a community before it goes out. But all this does not translate into a county budget at all. The fact that $2.8 billion in valuation of Fort Leavenworth pays 0 local tax hurts our local taxpayers dramatically. If we had a choice to go to an income tax system, it would alleviate our problem completely. The best part about Senate Bill 108 is it is county specific. Let each county decide what the best system of taxation is. When I started this job as commissioner, I thought the local form of government was responsible for deciding what's best for our constituents. We found a big problem, and we are asking for your help to fix it. This bill is asking you to let the local voters decide what is the best taxation system for them. Everyone is searching for a way to reduce property taxes across the state. This would fix Leavenworth County and several other counties like Geary and Riley struggling with all these exemptions. In conclusion, I just wanted to try to paint you a picture of Leavenworth County situation. Past commissioners in our county have painted us into a corner by not addressing this single biggest problem for us. This year, we are beginning to start closing bridges from lack of funds. If we don't get some sort of relief like this bill, we will be bankrupt very soon. Our current county budget is not sustainable. And to answer a couple questions I think the senators brought up about the non-residents would pay, that's kind of what this bill is for. If you lived in Missouri but worked in Kansas, you would pay this tax, and that's what we're trying to accomplish, is we have all these, the majority of employees on Fort Leavenworth don't live in Leavenworth County, the majority. They use our roads and bridges to get to the fort, but they don't pay a penny toward maintaining them. Another question that came up is, we worried too about, in the earlier versions of Senator Haley's bill, being an added tax. A lot of people I talked to said, well, it'll just be one more added on tax. In the bill, we put in there, you you don't get to collect it if you don't use it 100% toward property tax relief. That's all I have. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Jeff. Questions? Senator Klemp.
Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you, Madam Chair. So being that both of all the groups that are speaking are the counties that I represent, do you feel, you've been touting this for a long time, why do you feel it's a county specific? And I agree with you that it is, but it might be worth you expanding on that a little bit, as well as the uniqueness of being a border state that borders Kansas City or the Kansas City Metro, and how that impacts the counties differently than maybe some other counties that border on other parts of the state. So 2 questions there. If you don't mind touching on those to just educate the team.
So we like the idea of it being county specific because some counties don't have this issue. There's a lot of counties out west, they don't have any exemptions, but they also don't have any income. So if you tried to do it statewide, your counties that had a lot of income, like I mentioned, Leavenworth County is the 3rd highest income tax earner in the state. If you applied this statewide to every county, Leavenworth County would end up subsidizing some of the counties that don't have that much income revenue. And we have a particular problem, like you mentioned, about being a border county. Also, the majority of employees that work at Fort Leavenworth live in Missouri. So they come across, use our bridge to come across to get to the fort, use our roads, use our ambulance service, use all the assets and services, but they don't pay anything for it. So this would be a way to help our residents cover their costs. For instance, I manage the ambulance service. It costs us $2 million a year. That's why there's no private ambulance services in Leavenworth County, because it's a losing business. So our taxpayers have to subsidize our EMS service $2 million a year. The fort uses that service, and they don't pay anything toward it. So every time an ambulance goes to Fort Leavenworth, our taxpayers pay for that ambulance if it's not covered by insurance.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Commissioner Culberson. So to layer on to Senator Peck's comment earlier, making sure that what is being collected goes to ensuring that it drives down property tax. I think the strength of that, how that's done, is going to be important in this conversation. So I don't know if you can touch on that, but firsthand knowledge, I do see the traffic, the longer lines are always going across the bridge going into Missouri. So I can attest to that in a lot of what we do.
Yeah, absolutely. The first couple versions, I think, if I remember right, was only asking for 50% of this money to be applied toward property tax. So this new version is 100%, and I think it's also in there that if you don't use it for property tax relief 100%, then you don't even get to collect it. So that should.
So how would, just to layer, how would that work? So you've already collected it. In this scenario, you're not going to use it for that. How would that get pulled back?
That's stuff I don't know yet.
Okay.
You know, we're not that far down the road to work out all the exact specifics, but.
And we're short on time. Senator Owens? No, that's fine. Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you. So you raised a very interesting point with the amount of exempt property in a county or a city. So here's my question. If this is a county-wide sales tax, would the cities benefit from it at all, or is this just?
Income tax?
Yeah, sorry, yeah, income tax, my apologies. So if we, in essence, flipped an earning tax for property tax, are you talking about this just benefiting the county and the county's portion of property tax, or would it also trickle down to the cities?
So the numbers that we're trying to work up are, if we eliminate the county property tax completely, that should be pretty easy to do with 1%. But we don't really know the numbers of how much this is going to generate yet. It hasn't really got that far yet. But we would like to apply this toward the school tax and the city's tax and the township tax and all the other taxes, the library tax. So we'd like to start with the county tax first, and that should cut people's taxes in about half. And depending on how much money this generates, apply it to the rest. I'm a big believer, though, in not putting all your eggs in one basket. So I wouldn't want to completely eliminate property taxes 100% and go to all income tax nor sales tax. I think you should put about a third on sales tax, a third on income tax, and a third on property tax, so that if any situation comes up, not one group could get hurt because all their eggs are in one basket. So depending on how much money this generates, and I think that's the next logical step, is do some calculations to figure out exactly how much money are we talking about, because it's going to be different for every entity. Wyandotte County is going to be different than Leavenworth County and so on. So
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So have you considered talking to KDOT about fee-based bridges? There's legislation, and I know we're out of time. I just want to throw that out, food for thought. And I don't know where Leavenworth County and Wyandotte County are on their sales tax limits, so I'll get that from research and distribute that to the committee. So thank you very much, Jeff.
thank you very much.
Yeah. Mike Taylor, and we're going to run out of time for the opponents. Okay, thank you, Mike.
Hi, I'm here today representing the Kansas County Commissioners Association, and that's all the elected county commissioners in the state of all 105 counties. And I want to broaden the view on this a little bit. We support this bill because despite what some think, counties are continually looking for ways to reduce our reliance on property tax. And this would be an option for a lot of counties. And I'll be honest, it would not work for every county. It would work, as you've heard from Leavenworth and Wyandotte. I think it would work for border counties, and I think it would work for counties that have regional centers, Salinas, Hayes, Dodge City, places where people drive into work and would leave some of those wages behind. So we support it. And again, I think it's up to local control. And of course, you hear from us all the time. That's a foundation of what we believe is home rule and local control. And this would leave it up to our elected officials and the voters that they represent. So thank you.
No, thank you, Mike. Committee, no questions? Okay. Thank you. There is written testimony from Representative Curtis, Jay Hall, and Marcus Wynn. Opponents, Dan Murray. My apologies, Dan, for the limited time.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, my name is Dan Murray. I'm the Kansas State Director for the National Federation of Independent Business. We represent nearly 4,000 small business owners from across the state. I think it probably, you're probably not going to be shocked in what I say in opposition. Certainly, we oppose this bill. We believe that this bill takes us in the wrong direction, makes us less competitive. Small business owners list in their top priorities taxes being 4 of their top biggest concerns. That also includes complexity, not just rates. This adds another layer of complexity with compliance. So certainly, Madam Chair, I'll just keep it simple and say we oppose this bill.
Thank you. The complexity issue is something to consider, so thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions? Senator Peck.
Madam Chairman, this, in reading through the bill, it looks like it's an individual income tax, not a tax on businesses, correct?
75% of small business owners pay at the individual level, are pass-through entities, so this would impact small businesses disproportionately, for sure.
But it's not a corporate tax or business tax, it's an income tax. And I understand.
It's an earnings tax, but
Yes.
so if you're an LLC, other pass-through entities, you would pay this earnings tax as a small business owner.
Thank you.
And Madam Chair, I might add too, the discussion around buying down property taxes, that's a priority for small business owners. I appreciate the bringers of this bill in terms of their attempts to bring down property tax rates, but we just don't think this is the right way to do it. And I think probably some of the concerns that I would have are along the lines of what we've experienced at the state level with LAVTR. We've since done away with that. There was no guarantee that the local entities would actually pay down or buy down property taxes with that state transfer. I think this kind of creates a similar mechanism where there's no guarantee that it would be put towards, at least a verifiable guarantee that it'd be put towards property taxes.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Yeah. Committee, Eric Stafford is our next conferee. Welcome.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Eric Stafford, Vice President of Government Affairs with the Kansas Chamber. Similar sentiments to Mr. Murray. Proponents of the bill said that the tax burden is too high for people in their community, and we're not lowering taxes. We're just simply shifting and replacing where the taxes are paid and how they're paid. So this isn't relieving the tax burden of people in Wyandotte County or any other county that would want to do this. They're just saying we might cut property taxes, but we're also going to charge you more. It would really be an interesting economic study to watch money walk for those counties who do impose an earnings tax and those who don't, and see where business and investment chooses to shift and where they choose to go to. The residents of Wyandotte County who are upset, rightfully so, over their property taxes, that is a great county that has experienced significant growth and investment over the last 20 to 30 years with the Star Bond program that developed the Speedway and Legends area and all the business and investment that came from that. That would have been a great opportunity to use that additional property tax growth to lower property taxes, but they probably didn't. Residents continue to see valuation increases, and that, again, is a local control thing where they can control their property taxes. So instead of charging wealth and trying to shift the tax burden from one source to another, we ask that the committee reject this bill so local governments can actually focusing on real tax relief instead of shifting tax relief. So happy to answer any questions that you guys have.
Thank you, Eric. And one of the comments that you made on the property taxes, I know NASCAR doesn't pay any, and several of those businesses that were in Star Bonds have been exempted. It's kind of a hit and miss. It's not all of them, but they didn't have to give the abatements either, is what you're referring to. Would that be correct?
I'm just referring in general the growth in the tax base. I'm pretty sure the Speedway and Entertainment Group does pay property taxes. I don't know exactly what the status is.
I did the research last year when we were doing the Chiefs and Royal Stadium.
Yeah, so is that because of nonprofit status, or I'm not sure exactly why?
Abatement.
County abatement, okay.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, so.
Good point, though. Any other questions for Eric? Senator Peck.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I understand low taxes are important, and I understand your position 100%. But I'm going to just play the advocate for the other side here for a little bit. This is a tax on individuals, not on businesses.
Except for pass-through entities, small businesses, as Mr. Murray said, they do pay at the individual income tax level. Corporations do not, but individuals and individual business owners will pay.
I got you. I got you. But there's a provision in this bill, and it hasn't been talked about while I was in here. I was late during the explanation, so it was probably mentioned. The business entity will be allowed to keep 1.5% to 3% of the tax amount they collect. So that would be a little bit of additional money to the business.
To offset property taxes?
No, they are able to keep a portion of the earnings tax that they collect from their employees before submitting it to the state, as I understand the legislation. And I'm not trying to advocate one way or another. I just thought I would throw that out. I guess my point in, Madam Chair, even throwing these questions.
It'd be an interesting policy decision from people who constantly rail on businesses for not taking care of their workers to tax the workers but not the business owner. That's an interesting dynamic.
I'm not talking about the business owner, but the business itself is allowed to keep a portion of the taxes collected in this legislation.
Collected on behalf of the employees?
No, collected on behalf of the county.
Of the wages?
Yes.
Yes, the wages of the employees.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, we're going in circles here.
Yeah.
But I don't know what amount of money that would be. It wouldn't be significant. But the business who withholds the earnings tax will keep a portion of that earnings tax.
Kind of like Peak. That's how Peak works.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
Tanner, can you really quick? Okay, great. So we can close the hearing.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, I appreciate the time to speak. I will make it brief. Mr. Stafford and the other opponents really hit the nail on the head there. I mean, we obviously oppose SB 108. You know, I heard a couple arguments about people leaving our states to go to other places. And, you know, we've seen that migration from high tax states to low tax states. So I think we're working in the wrong direction if we're looking at doing these type of income tax increases. So, you know, the states that rely more heavily on income tax, again, experience slower job growth and lower GDP to increases than those that emphasize consumption-based taxation. A few points here, you know, inter-county tax avoidance, workers who commute across county lines would face the complex tax filing requirements. Another thing, you know, compliance costs of businesses. Employers would be forced to track and withhold local employee income tax based on residency, adding another layer of administrative burden. Revenue volatility, income taxes would fluctuate significantly with economic cycles. So making them an unstable revenue source. Counties relying on income tax revenue could experience sudden budget shortfalls during economic downturns. Allowing our counties to impose an income tax would open the door to ever-expanding local government budgets. So in my written testimony, I included some research from George Mason University that finds that once a new tax is introduced, spending tends to grow to meet the available revenue rather than being used as a last resort. So this creates a fiscal illusion. It occurs when governments expand programs based on projected revenues rather than demonstrated necessities. So Kansas already struggles with government overspending at both the state and local levels. So moving in the wrong direction. Instead of introducing a new revenue stream, lawmakers should focus on fiscal responsibility, spending limits, and tax policies that encourage growth. So again, just to drive the point here, Kansans are continuously in front of higher tax burdens. I know we discussed as a whole legislator on the property tax side, so I think we are looking at addressing some of those issues as well. We want the people and the businesses in the state to thrive. And unfortunately, our neighbors to the west, south, and unfortunately even Missouri have lower income taxes than we do here. So for those reasons, I urge the committee to oppose this bill.
Thank you, Tanner, and thank you for being brief. Committee, any questions for Tanner? Thank you.
You bet.
We have written testimony by Dave Trobert and neutral by, it doesn't say, written by Spencer Duncan. Is there anybody else that would like to testify? Seeing none, committee, I'll close the hearing on Senate Bill 108. We will be meeting Monday, and we do have a full agenda for next week. And committee, it is going to change. We got another House bill, so I'll be adding that to the list also. Is there any other business to be brought before us? Seeing none, we're adjourned.